said we're restarting it.
Good to go.
Okay, keep talking. Hello.
Hey. Okay, no, I've got to reset the web page. Hold on.
Elijah, stop.
Do we have sound? Yes, we do.
Please stop. Come over here, Elijah. Yeah, and they still can't find it. We can count. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis.
7, 8, 9,
7, 8, 9,
10.
10.
11, 12, 13.
They are actually streaming.
Oh, okay. Well, they asked about counting. Elijah. So why aren't we starting?
I've got to reset the web page so that they can watch it.
Kinsey and Van. Wait, stay here. Stay here.
No sound. They just texted you no sound.
They've got to refresh their web pages.
Tell them to refresh their web page. Refresh your web page.
It's working, but they've got to refresh. That means they have to close down their browser, open it up again, and then hit refresh on the page.
Should be fixed, period. Refresh your page.
So we're working on that now.
Right.
There's not a lot going on.
Hey, Dylan.
What?
Can you come here and stand still, please? Just stand there. Elijah. Hey, Kaylee. Come up here, please. Kaylee, are they on? Stay right here, please. Are we?
Okay. If you're watching the live stream now, I hope that there is sound. If you could text us back and let us know. For those of you who are hearing the live stream or watching on our YouTube page, if you could let people know that they need to refresh their browsers. So the link on our website now works, but you've got to refresh it again. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, all right, so we were just talking about the fact that we ended up having to carry our bedding and overnight stuff across, or some of our stuff across the bridge. It's roughly about a mile that we have to walk. And the reason being is that we left vans and other vehicles behind and loaded all of our luggage into 2 trailers and 2 vans to carry, and then loaded whatever people we could in the rest of them, carried them across a different border location, and then we loaded a bus on the other side. So we didn't take all of the vehicles that we brought with us, and we couldn't take all of our luggage and the books and the food and all that kind of stuff down with us in just those vans without transferring it to a bus. So here's us walking across the bridge, and then midway across the bridge, this is what you see. And for a while, our family was split, some of us on one side and some of us on the other side. And anyway, obviously it's not a big deal because it's all on the walk. On the other side, we took all of the stuff that was in the vans and the stuff that we had and loaded them in the bus to take us down. And then, of course, we left there and drove straight through the night and arrived at Colegio Ignacio Allende, which is the Adventist school there. All right.
Okay, life in Mexico. Well, there is a lot that we could tell you about life in Mexico. Before he gets to the first picture, though, somebody asked me about the weather there. And, I always have said I would love to go to Australia for Christmas because it's in the southern hemisphere and I could have a nice warm Christmas, totally different than I'm used to. And that's pretty much, we didn't go to the southern hemisphere, but that's what it was. It was 80 plus degrees, maybe 85 some days. It was very humid, very moist. Our skin liked it. We breathed well.
Yeah, we're really dry
There
out
was,
now.
yeah, when we got home, it was quite
We're
a big
struggling.
deal. But there were a couple of days it did get cooler in the 60s. It was raining a couple of days, not while we worked at all. But the people there were cold at 60 degrees. They were very cold at 60 degrees. So anyways, we had a nice warm time. If it was warm here, we could show you. We have farmer's tans to prove it. But you'll never know that because it's too cold. Okay, so.
Did you want that? So you can,
I
or do you
can-
see
you
the
can do
pictures?
it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so this is the inside of the school that we lived at. All around, you see the balconies. It was 3 levels, and there were classrooms. Each of the families got a classroom, and the rest of the girls were in one area, and the boys were in another area. So anyways, this is where we live. Right there is where we had our worships. That's where we ate. Right behind, kind of like from where we're standing looking at that, there was a makeshift set-up kitchen. We brought all the food that we ate, not all of it, but the majority of it, they made from boxes and cans and things like that. They brought a lot of it from America. So anyways, we did it all right there. Can you tell what that is? That's toilet paper.
No, that's Lifesaver.
That is a lifesaver right there. You know, somebody told me I just happened to throw 1 roll of toilet paper in. I had a whole lot of things that was just in case I needed it. And this probably topped the list for being thankful because they don't supply toilet paper.
Or use.
Well, I don't know what they use. I don't know.
Many of the restrooms.
No, they did, because at the grocery stores you could buy toilet paper. But wherever you went, at the grocery stores and stuff like that, you either had to pay for toilet paper or have your own toilet paper. And so I quickly learned after our very first stop where we transferred stuff from the vans into the buses, I quickly learned that you must carry toilet paper everywhere you go. And we were grateful for it every day we were there. So this is the bathroom on the outside of one of the houses. There's the toilet. There's no lid. They don't use lids there. No, or the seats. They don't use seats there.
Can you see? Oh, well.
It's outside of the house.
Can you see that bucket there?
Well, go back to the first picture. Because right there on your right, there's that big bin there with the lid halfway on. It was filled with water. And so after you go to the bathroom, you take the bucket that's inside there, you dip it into the big bin of water, and you
Flush.
pour it down the toilet, and it flushes.
That's how you
Naomi
flush.
seems to be familiar with this, yes. So anyways, that's how you flush.
And then that bucket back there is your toilet paper bucket.
That's where you...
Used toilet paper can't go down the toilet.
Right, and you dispose it into the pail right there. So anyways, and even at the compound, actually, where we stayed at the school, you couldn't flush it. You had to put it into a bin. Anyways, somebody cleaned the bathrooms every day that was with us. So that was very interesting. We were really glad to have our own toilet paper when we went to... At the work sites, we had to use either people's houses or something. And
are we getting sound now? Okay, all right, good.
Okay. The other thing about the bathrooms is whenever you use public restrooms, like if we stopped at a gas station or something like that, you had to pay 5 pesos to go to the bathroom.
This is a restroom.
This is a restroom. You had to put in 5 pesos.
Right here.
And go through the metal bars. They would let 2 people go in if they were, one of them was very little. Or
5 pesos roughly equivalates to about 25 cents.
Yeah, I meant to bring some
And the amount
money.
of toilet paper they give you is a lot less than you're used to.
If you pay, though, usually the bathrooms were pretty nice, the ones that we had to pay for.
Yeah.
So I was going to say about the money, actually. When we left Mexico, it was 20 pesos to a dollar.
Yeah.
So about 100 pesos to $5. So anyways, we had lots of pesos while we were there.
Actually, my math was off then. If it was 20 pesos to a dollar. No, that was right. 5 pesos would be 25 cents. Okay, my math was right. Yeah. Got confused there.
Yeah,
okay.
It wasn't expensive. We were happy to pay to go to the bathroom. Very happy.
Next.
Okay, the next thing is these are our showers. There were no shower facilities at the school there, and so they had a row of 6, I believe, of these showers. They were bucket showers. They were very gracious to us. We did fill the bucket with water from the hose or tap, but then they did have a little makeshift stove there. We could put 1 or 2 little pans.
You got a couple of scoops of hot water in it.
This is my story.
Yes, dear.
of hot water. So anyways, it wasn't as shocking as, they had a little brick platform and a little chair in there for your stuff. At first, Kaylee and I would go together, and one of us would take it and the other would stand outside with the stuff, but we figured out how to do it by ourselves and not get everything wet. So anyways, and with it being so hot, we always took our showers after we got back because we were so dirty, and so anyways, it felt pretty good. So it wasn't so bad, but we did decide unanimously, was it unanimously, not to continue with bucket showers when we got home. David almost wanted to, but we said no.
Well, I found that I could actually take 2 showers with one 5-gallon bucket. And I'm realizing at home I'm wasting lots of water. I mean, 2 complete showers in 5 buckets of water.
And let me tell you, when we got home, I wasted a lot of hot water as I stood there, and it came down on me. It was so nice.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so
right,
the next thing. So laundry, that was also another interesting thing that the kids had never experienced. First of all, if I just needed a little bit of something washed, we would put one of the things I stuck in just in case was a 2-gallon, well, all sorts of Ziploc bags. But the 2-gallon bag worked for laundry. Put a little laundry soap in there and water. It works on swoosh cycle and spin cycle and soak cycle. And anyways, then we would wring it out and rinse it out.
But why did we do it by hand?
We did it by hand because everybody does that. Actually, they have washers, but
No
we
dryers.
could have taken it down the street to a little place that washes laundry, but they said there's no guarantee that you'll get everything back that you send, and there's no guarantee of when you'll get it back. We decided we wanted it back, so we decided to do our own laundry, and actually we took suitcases, or we took totes instead of suitcases, so we just emptied one out and we used it as laundry. This is kind of dark because the boys did it one evening. They have 5-gallon buckets and totes, and they just scrub together, swish around. Anyways, that's the dirty pile, and there's clothes in the tote, and then the rinse bucket. Anyways, it was quite a process. That's what I did on Christmas Day. Kaylee had been throwing up on Christmas Eve, and so she needed to stay home and rest, and so I did laundry on Christmas Day. Merry Christmas. It took me a long time. And here is our laundry line. Everybody there.
In our room.
Nobody has dryers. And so they all on their rooftops and in their yards. But this was ours. Another thing I threw in was rope or string. And so we figured out how to attach it all around the room. And there's our clothes trying to dry in the humid weather.
It takes a couple days.
But it finally did. Finally did. So anyways, that was an experience. And we were thankful for our washing machine because we had like 20 loads of laundry when we got home. But we got through that. So the next thing we want to tell you about is the food. We had to be really careful. When you go to Mexico, you have to be very careful about what you eat and what you drink. The man in charge would even tell us when we would go to a church, they'll want to feed you. After the evangelism series in the evening, they want to bring food. He said, don't eat the food. You just never know what water they used. You never know how they cooked it.
Or how they washed.
Or how they washed the utensils and the pans, so it's best. So we did our very best to stay away from most of the things. They did bring in some people to make us tamales a couple of nights.
But they made it generally, knowing the restrictions, the water we used was bottled water. Sealed bottled water. So, I mean, they made sure that if anyone brought us food, they knew how it was made.
So, but the one thing that we really enjoyed a lot of was a lot of fresh things that they would bring to the work sites. They love to come and stand around and be with us when we work, to help us work, or just to bring things to us. Anyways, Elijah's going to tell us about the fruit and things that we saw in Mexico.
All right.
So there was a lot of fruits, bananas. We saw them on trees. We saw them hanging, and we saw there was lots of oranges, and there was papayas.
It's kind of hard to see there, but they're hanging right from the tree. And
star fruit.
It's kind of dark too. She's got one in her hand, and there's some hanging from the tree right there.
That was actually our outreach Sabbath, and it was one of the locals. We went to their yard praying with them and whatnot, and anyways, they offered the kids, some of the kids could pick star fruit right from the tree, so that was a neat experience. Star fruit. Oh, you haven't seen it.
Imagine it's about 4 to 6 inches long, and probably 2.5 inches in diameter with a star pattern on it. And when it's fully ripe, it's yellow, and it's kind of it's got the consistency of a pear, but with a slightly citrus flavor to it.
If you were to slice it, they would look like star pieces.
Yeah, 5-pointed stars.
Some
When you this is one right here, and when you slice it across section, it's got a 5-pointed star. So that's why they call it that. And there's a lot of all of these trees that we took pictures of are just like right off the road, in someone's yard, in the churchyard. They're everywhere. There's another one. I don't even know what that is, but it's another fruit that was readily there.
There was even coconuts that they cut with machetes so we could drink the coconut water out, and then they sliced it in half so we could get the meat out.
They also had food vendors everywhere. This guy actually knew what he was doing. He stationed himself right outside of where we were staying. So when the vans and the buses and everything would come back, he got a lot of business there. And I didn't even know what he was selling, except for that they were little bags of chips, and he would put like corn, and what else did he put in there?
They had like chips, and then there you would put corn in, and then there's like cheese and many other seasonings you could put in on top.
The best equivalent would be like he was basically cutting a bag in half and making nachos out of a bag, because he'd cut the bag lengthwise, put the nachos or the chips in the bottom, and put whatever toppings you wanted on the top of that. And you could get it with meat and cheese and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we didn't. We didn't get any, but some of the people there did. Anyways, really interesting.
You'd find people selling stuff in the middle of the roads, and people would stop to buy them. Then there were vendors everywhere, all kinds of vendors. I mean, and not even just food. This is all sorts of foods and candies and nuts and dried fruit, and there were also flowers. I mean, vendors everywhere, everywhere. These are piñatas that they were selling alongside the road. There's some of their transportation in the back, that horse and cart. What's that? Oh, this was one of their shopping plazas. Very thin, very crowded. You had to kind of be careful. They always told us to go together. So we were always in groups because, I don't know, people are looking for Americans, I guess. Anyways.
We actually, while we were on that trip, we actually had a couple of Mexican guides, and we got kind of elongated as we were single file through this. We were probably 15 of us, 20 of us, they're just going through. And one of them came back, and I kind of stepped back a little bit and let my family go in front of me because there was a couple of guys. I was like, I don't know. I know enough Spanish. I can hear them, and I wondered if they were eyeing us. And he comes back. And he just kind of looks at them while we pass. He's looking at them, and then I was looking at him, and I was like, so you came back for us? He says, yeah. He said, I was questioning those two. So anyways, it was a kind of a bit of a shady area, so you don't want to go anywhere without a guide that can understand the dangers of where you're at. So,
but it was
Costa Rica, 180,000, I think.
So pretty big.
I'd have to go back and take a look at it. It was pretty large.
But anyways, we only had one day to sightsee or shop or whatever, so we did just a little bit of it. But it was fun to barter, and we don't know a lot of Spanish, but we knew enough to dicker with them a little bit. But their prices are so cheap that really you don't want to like do them wrong or anything, so we mostly paid what they offered. But anyways, it was fun to talk with them and barter and see what we could get. We got a couple of Mexican blankets and a couple of purses. And
the thing is never accept their first price, because you're obviously American.
Yeah.
And they obviously want your money. And so don't accept their first price or their second or their 50th. You just keep bargaining farther down, and don't feel bad about walking away, because someone else will know that you said no to them. When you go farther down, they'll know to offer you a lower rent. You dicker them. You go down a little bit farther, you dicker them, and pretty soon you'll get around the price. Or you just take someone who is able to speak fluently, and they know the prices, and then they just start right where they know the price ought to be. So, anyways.
Unless you're Amy and you just want to help them out, so then you pay. But it's okay.
Okay.
So transportation was a new thing. We started by traveling down when we got to the border, we loaded up in a bus and we stopped here at this plaza place. In Mexico, we mostly rode in 15-passenger vans and the bus, and we rode in the back of a pickup truck. I don't think we ever wore seatbelts while we were down in Mexico. People were riding in the back of a pickup 2 hours to a work site through the middle of the city.
Well, the hardest part about this one, right under my arm, is a cooler. And it was a cooler without a plug. So it was draining. I got up, my backside was drenched the entire way. So I had 2 hours of ice water on my bum the entire way. It was so unpleasant. I don't know. You have a soggy bottom and think of air conditioning. Yeah, a water cooled. That's not cool. That's just not cool. So it was not only a rough ride to begin with, but it was very uncomfortable. Go ahead, sorry.
For the most part, we rode in only, we had 3 15-passenger vans and a pickup, of course. And I think the most we piled into a 15-passenger van was 28 people. They've had years where they piled in like
34.
34, I think.
Yep.
Was.
Understand, it's a little bit different. Their speed limits are slower, and he'll tell you why in a little bit. So most people don't wear a seatbelt. I don't think we ever saw an accident, ever. And it was a large enough city that we would have. No accidents, no rollovers, and people, it's a lot more courteous driving there.
Inside the city driving, you would find lots of topes. And topes are the Mexican word for speed bumps. And that was what they used to slow people down. So you would get going in the city, you start driving faster, and then you'd see another tope, and you'd slow down, and you'd bump over it, and then you try and speed up only to find another one. So,
unless you missed it, and then the driver would just go crazy bumping over it, and the people in the back of the van would hit the ceiling and keep going.
In Mexico, there were a lot of taxis. There were...
we didn't get to this. Taxis are coming in a moment.
Okay. Other transportation they used, we saw a Coca-Cola truck, and I think we saw a few of those traveling out into cities. This is a Coca-Cola truck, and this is their transportation. They ride burros and donkeys and mules. So that's how they get around. That's what they drive. Not in the city. That was back in the country. In the city, there were lots of taxis. I would say there are more taxis than there are cars. Taxis are the cheapest way for them to get around, and there's a lot of them. So really, that's what lots of people ride in. In the cities, there were really no lanes. You just rode wherever you could find a spot. There was lots of passing, very close passing. People were honking. I mean, like that's their communication. So they honk to say hello and to say I'm here and to say goodbye and just to tell you whatever. I mean, yeah. And in America, you're like most people honk like get out of my way, but there's like every day hello, and then sometimes the police would pull you over just because they wanted some money. Like one time, some of the crew got pulled over. Our crew got pulled over. They were trailing behind us a ways, and they got pulled over. And the police were trying to find some ticket to give them because they wanted money for soda. And we got out of that and we left. And then sometimes you'll find an ambulance crew just by the road with a boot. They're trying to collect money because the government is so corrupt there, they don't get money. So they don't have money for fuel. You call for an ambulance if someone calls. They may ask you, well, do you have money to pay for our fuel? And if you don't, well, you don't get an ambulance. And then sometimes when you go through construction, they'll also be collecting money. I mean, they need money to work and for what they need, but they don't get money either. So they'll try to be collecting money.
Okay. Okay, there are a lot of different aspects of our work. Are we good? Okay. So this center heart right here in the downtown Poza Rica was where the school was at. Our first church was right here, Prensa Nacional. The second church was Santa Aguera. The third church was Chiqualoque. And the last one was in Las Palmas. And I don't know where the fifth one was that actually we put the roof on, because I wasn't a part of the roofing crew, and the rest of the team didn't go to that site, but there was a fifth site that everything was built, they just needed a roof. Obviously, this one here was 20 minutes away. Santa Aguera was probably 40 minutes-ish, 45 minutes. This one here, Chiqualoque, was our farthest one. You had to go all the way out, and then this is all dirt back, single-track road. It took us, this section here alone took us 45 minutes. And then, of course, coming all the way out here. So that was a 2-hour drive one way to get out there. Las Palmas was our last church, and that one was a miracle church. We'll tell you a little bit more about that one. That was probably an hour and 20 minutes away, mostly main road going out there. So it actually wasn't, it looks farther away, but it wasn't. So this is typical of a work site. This is the bathroom. They're making, here's our cement mixer, the gravel, water, bricks are already up. You can see this one's already in progress, rebar for the construction. We're all in the middle of lunch, which was being served out here. And of course, this is the main road in front of the church. House is right there. We're walking up alongside the house. The drain off for that house for their wash and other things comes right down that aisle right there. So we're walking right along their drainage line as we're heading up into the church. A lot of smells there that you would not normally smell here. Praise the Lord. Everything was mixed by hand. Well, with a mixer, except for at one site, Las Palmas, we actually did mix it all by hand. All the mortar and all the concrete was mixed with shovels and wheelbarrows, etc. So it makes it difficult because obviously everything's generator or gas run because there's no power out in a lot of these places. Mixing crew, Elijah and his friends. We had to get the blocks. The blocks were laid down on the road, and they had to be brought all the way up to the main level and then moved throughout the workplace. We were running 2 lines of bricks. I was at the head of that one, and then one of my friends was there, and we were running 2 lines of bricks all the way to the back. All the churches are basically the same layout, 8 meters by 16 meters. This one's a little bit longer. It was 8 meters by 20 meters. And so we had to get it all the way to the back. That line stretched all the way back. You can see the walls are already up here. We're running more blocks back up onto the scaffold so that they can continue building the other end of that wall. Yep. I'm literally tossing the blocks. I'm back here. I'm literally tossing the blocks, but they're throwing them from the bottom. They throw them up from the bottom. I caught them. I threw them up and over the scaffold, and they would toss them down. So we were just back and forth, tossing those blocks from the end. What? Basically they'd called a line halt, but they didn't actually turn around and tell me. And so I had already released, and I said, watch out. And so he just moved like this and dropped it down, and it broke the brick. But that was the only time. So anyways, we learned after that to make sure that everyone got communicated down the line. So, okay. This is JR. He has done this a lot, and he was our brick cutter. And he was cutting because we had to make custom for some corners, biscuits and bond blocks, etc. We'll explain those in a little bit, and that's what Elijah's working on. These are bond blocks for the bond beam. Basically, they'll end up laying rebar down through that and then pouring concrete on it once they layer it around, and I'll show you a little bit more at what point in time that they do that. Kaylee is dumping, Bethany, is dumping mud or mortar out on the pallets so that they can lift it up. Food in a trailer. We emptied out the trailer and put the cooks in it, and they're serving lunch.
No, not the cooks. We did not cook. We only served what was sent with us. Somebody would either drive us lunch out to where we were, or if it was the 2-hour away church, then they would send coolers with us. We had a lot of pasta because it's cheap and because you can take it in a box and cook it there. So pretty much every day, I think we had pasta and some other stuff. We didn't. Tortillas is one of the things we did eat that they got there.
But they got them bagged.
Well, they made them there. The people made them.
Oh, they handmade them? I didn't see that.
Yeah. We did eat their tortillas, but when we had lettuce one time when we were there, but they soaked it in vinegar to disinfect it. We didn't eat a whole lot of fresh things except for all the fruit that they would bring.
If the fruit had a tough skin that you had to peel off, you could eat it. If they gave you an apple, don't eat it. It's a permeable skin. So anything that had a non-permeable skin that you had to pull off, that was safe to eat, so long as you were the one peeling it off, because you didn't know where their knives were, you didn't know where their fingers had been. So if they gave it to you and it had a skin on it, you could cut it and eat it, or peel it and eat it. But if it didn't have a skin that you could peel like that, you didn't touch it. Some
of us didn't touch it.
Yeah. The wall going up, laying the mortar down, lining the bricks up. If you can't see that, Kaylee's having a midday snack, sticking it to the ribs. Each end of the church had a nice tall gable end, so they had to consolidate their scaffolding and move up to that end. And you got real dirty, because the buckets that they would use to fill with concrete, and I praise the Lord that I was up already. They had guys their job was to go down below, scoop the concrete out of the bin, lift it up above their heads to the next group up. That group would carry it all the way down to the scaffolding and lift it up to the top of the scaffolding where you could reach it, and you'd lift it up to the next site and pour it in on the gable ends. Whew, that's a lot of lifting. Well, many of their buckets were cracked. That's what you get. So half the concrete went right down my front. So this one here is the one at Chiqualoque, and that is the finished before the roof goes on. Now, they have not poured a floor on that one yet because they were having problems. There was a tree right in the middle of the floor that they had to dig out, and so they didn't get a chance to pour it before we came in, but they did get the foundation in so that we could put up the walls. So they've got to level the inside and pour the floor. That's what it looks like. That one's actually at Las Palmas. That's what the finished product looks like. Their responsibility will obviously to put in windows and to bring, we put conduit in for electricity, but they've got to run it. So windows, doors, and obviously if there's any left to do in the flooring or that kind of stuff, they got to do that themselves. But the foundation, the walls, the boxes and the conduit for the electrical and the roof were put on for them. Now, what I wanted to do is someone did us a favor and did a time-lapse photography of the first church. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of that time-lapse. There's the first layer going on. The fourth layer will be a bond beam. It'll go all the way around, and there'll be concrete and rebar that hold the bond beam. From the fourth layer up, the windows start. You've got two doors right here. This is the bond beam going in right now. They'll lay in the concrete and the rebar. In fact, you'll see I'm coming down this side. We're pouring concrete in across the back and across that side. Next day, so day 2, now we're building windows up. When the windows have finished, once at the top of the windows, there's another bond beam that gets concrete and rebar all the way across the top. Also, there's bond beams here, 3 in this section, 2 in this section, that have concrete going all the way down to make sure that the structure stays together. There's your bond beam across the top. Now, the gable ends will go up. They're now removing the scaffolding, bringing them down to the end. That's the end of day 2. Now day 3, the roofing crew comes in. That's the baptismal area there. Their lunch break. This was the long one, so this was 8 by 20, 8 meters by 20 meters. What? It was fairly large. A couple of things about the cost. It cost them about $5,000 to build a church complete. That church is broken up in its different responsibilities. Mexico Missions covers the funding for all of the roofs, which are about $2,000 for all of the materials and everything to get all of the roofing materials there to each site. The church, local church, is responsible for the property and the foundation, and the conference covers all of the brickwork and mortar and concrete and all that kind of stuff that goes up to build it. And again, the total cost is roughly about $5,000 per church, give or take. Some of them, we had one that was only 8 by 12, one was 8 by 13. Most of them are 8 by 16, and then that one was 8 by 20. So costs vary just a little bit, but that's what their average is. And obviously that doesn't include them finishing it, which they'll finish it by putting windows and light and electrical and doors, and then they'll stucco the outside. So they'll just make it nice and smooth and make it all look pretty. Any questions about that so far? Okay. Yeah. Rebar, yes. Yes. The rebar, and when I was talking about the bond beams that go up and down, everywhere there's a bond beam going vertical or horizontal, there's a rebar in there, and the concrete and the rebar go straight through to the ground, as well as go all the way around to tie it all together. So there's a lot of concrete in there. I wouldn't even guess how much, but there's a lot of concrete to fill. It's not just a cinder block building. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Yep.
Okay, so our first Sabbath, we went to a church with a family who lived there, and we pulled up with our van, and I wondered where the church was because I didn't see any church. So we got out, and they pointed us to that little shack you see in the back. It had 2.5 walls. You walked in, there was a wall on the right, on the left, and half a wall to your right. And it was kind of surprising because with the little shack they had electricity, and they had microphones and PowerPoint and songs and all that, for the songs and all that stuff. So I was kind of surprised. When you walked in the yard, though, there was chickens all over the place eating a papaya, and there was papaya trees in the yard, and that was all cool. But when it rained really hard that day, and so while we were having service, it was raining on the tin roof, and that was really loud. But their speakers were big enough that they overpowered the rain, which is kind of surprising. For Sabbath school, the children's Sabbath school is usually held right outside the church, under the trees, right beside it in the yard. But since it was raining, we went to the neighbor's house, and she had a really large porch. So we had it out under their porch, and it was really cool because her 2 little kids got to come out. And because they weren't Adventists, they got to have a Sabbath school right there. We also did a lot of last-minute things. They asked our family to do special music, so we did that last minute. Some of our family was asked to help with children's story. And during Sabbath school, my dad was asked to preach the sermon. So he preached for his first time with a translator, and it was the translator's first time translating for a sermon. So it was something new for both of them, but they did really well. So, it was really nice. All the people were so friendly. And, they knew a couple words in English. We knew a couple in Spanish, so we, get a little bit back and forth. And they were all really so friendly and glad that we came.
Another aspect of the ministry there was periodically throughout the week, they would run vacation Bible schools. Huge response. This one here was at Santa Agueda, and they had a lot of kids that showed up. They have these open-air pavilions, and usually a city, this is one of the first things that cities build because that becomes the social center for the community. And so we would use the vacation Bible school teams would use these social centers, just open-air covered pavilions with concrete floors to have our vacation Bible schools in. And as you can see, it was well attended. The numbers I gave you earlier, almost 600 kids attended, that didn't account adults. That was the kids. So when they said that they had one of them, that was, I don't remember the second site, 250 kids showed up. That didn't include the adults. It was a massive, massive response to their VBS. Now, they also did health expos. And these health expos did a lot of things, just common things for the people, included a lot of hygienic things for the people. There were bandaging and suturing and dental and vision and haircuts. In fact, lots of haircuts. They basically learning to be a service to the community. This is really attractive because they don't usually have the money for these things. And so, to have someone come and fit them for eyeglasses or to help them with a wound that they have or to give them health advice, it's a huge, huge outreach. I didn't get the full idea, the scope of that because I didn't visit those. But that is an amazing thing. Also, during their evangelistic series, they would run kids programs. So they actually did evangelism at many of the churches that we were doing. We would build the church, and before the church was completed, they were already having meetings in it every night. So, it wasn't, they weren't waiting for the church to be built. They were already working, and they had already been working. And it's really kind of neat. We'll show you a little bit more about that when we talk about the evangelistic series and the baptisms and everything that happened. All right.
The friends. We made a lot of friends. Some we came from America with us. Some of them they're living in America, or in Mexico. But it was one of the best things, one of the best reasons for going. I think probably do you know? Yeah, these are a couple of girls that went with us, and they just hooked right on to Kaylee, and they were such a beautiful influence and just had a really good time working with them. They laid block together and all sorts of different things. And then these are a group of ladies. The African-American lady came with us, but the rest of them are right there from Mexico. They would just love to come around and be around and talk with us, even though I would have to say, no hablo español. And anyways, but it didn't matter. It didn't stop us from being friends, and there were a few people that could communicate. And so it was just beautiful to interact with the people, and they were so, so grateful for what we were doing for them. Dylan was some of the friends that he made at the first site, and it was really neat to see that the language barrier was of no effect there either. They just became friends, and one of the boys actually even got this app. He had a phone, and he got this app so that they could say what they were trying to say, and it would translate it into Spanish or into English, whichever the case. But they had a lot of fun with the kids there. There were two little kids that came with their parents. Those people were making food there to serve to us or those who wanted to eat it. This was the elder at the little church that we went to that first Sabbath, and he just enjoyed Dylan a lot. So, and these were some of the other ladies that we built churches with while we were down there. Just had a really, really nice
Really
time.
hard workers.
Really hard working. I tell you, spiritual things and hard work really bond people. So we had a really good time. And these are some friends that I took with me from America. And we came back even better friends. But that's the Gulf of Mexico there right behind us. So that's the first time we had ever seen it from the Mexico side. But anyways, the people made it all worth it.
Any more questions so far? Okay. Well, we got delayed because of the... Okay. All right. So one of the things we wanted to kind of outline is some of the miracles that we experienced, and we experienced a lot of them. On our trip down to Houston, we actually had a flat tire on the trailer and didn't know it until we pulled into a gas station. Unfortunately, that ended up being a problem all the way throughout because it ended up being and more than just a tire issue. It ended up being a bearing issue and then an axle issue. And then, well, in Mexico, you can't get all the parts you need. And so then we started welding to try and get it all back together. Well, somehow someone didn't get the pin in right or something like that. They were driving down the road, and suddenly the tire was passing them. And he says, hurry up. So one of the guys in the back, because they called on the CB, one of the guys in the back raced around with a van to get after it, and he had to get out of the car and yell, that's mine! And the guy's like, I saw it first. Nope, it's still rolling. It's mine. So we got our tire back because it was still rolling. If we had let it drop, then someone would have picked it up and just taken it. So anyways, the Lord was very good to us. We never had an accident that we caused. There was an accident that ended up happening, and I'll share a little bit more about that in just a minute. When we first got to the border, there were a couple of things we were praying for. Mexico and the United States are in a tit-for-tat fight about what happens across the border. And technically, Mexico does not allow 15-passenger vans or bigger to cross. But that's all we had, is 15-passenger vans. They don't allow buses to cross anymore either. So we heard that one of the border crossings would let us pass. So the vans and the trailers were going to go down through another entrance, and we were going to walk across this entrance. Well, the problem is obviously we had to get our visas first, and that oftentimes takes a lot. We went there, and we lined up. We took one van load, 15, across into Mexico at the visa booth. We started getting our visas, got it all filled out, etc. And then as we were talking, the guy noticed we were all going to the same place. He started asking questions, and I noticed, because my Spanish is good enough, I don't speak it very well, but I could hear, and I noticed he was beginning to get curious about where we were going, why we were going, and so we're trying to tell him, and so I pulled over one of the Spanish speakers, and I asked him, I said, listen, he's got some questions about our mission here. So he starts talking to him and everything, and then I said, hey, listen, let him know we got another 80 people coming. Because no, I mean, or there's a total of 80 people plus. And so he starts talking to him, and the guy's like, well, wow, I'm glad you guys are doing that, he says, but you don't all have to, just go back over the border and get all the passports. Just bring the passports. You don't have to bring the people. Just bring the passports. We'll give them visas. And the $30, because it was the $30 for the visa. But he didn't require that everybody come over. So one van load back, and they brought back all the passports, a massive pack of passports, and they just went and stamped them all, gave them all visas without even seeing the rest of our workers. And so it really shortened it up. When we came the next day, we came across the border, we all walked across that were going to be on the bus, and the vans and the trailers went through the other port. And then we got into a little bit of trouble, and they detained us for two reasons. Number one, a guy had lost control of his brakes, ran into a child, and then ran into one of our trailers. And so the police were all involved with that for a little bit. And in the process of that, they found out we had trailers full of suitcases for 80 people. When they looked in the vans, there wasn't 80 people. And they said, we need to see the people for the suitcases. So the bus had already left. We had to go back to that spot. We had to pull the vans around to the second spot, and then they had to inspect us. At that point in time, when they brought the vans around to the spot where we had crossed over, it is very possible they would have denied the visas for the vans and sent them back. And they didn't. They didn't even stop to look at the vans, so we're very grateful. Again, the border crossing that we walked across would not allow 15-passenger vans across, but the other border crossing did. And so they could have canceled that and sent us back. So really grateful for that. That was at the border crossing. I think that was, we did have a couple of students that were detained because of mistakes on their German visas, and that was an issue that another border crossing had made a mistake on. So it kind of got scary for a little bit when they were students were pulled aside into another room, and we didn't, know what was going on. Another miracle is just seeing the work that the Hispanics do in that area. This is a normal Sabbath afternoon activity, where after the church service, they go out door to door. They regularly go out door to door to talk with people, give out free books, to pray with them. They just go. And they go and they continually build relationships. And to the point where before the first church was even finished, they'd made friends already with the people right across the street. She ends up being one of the ones that was baptized because they made friends with her. They were just out there. It was just amazing to see the amount of people that we could see on a walkabout. It was really beautiful. And again, they were inviting these people to church, inviting them to, and then we'd go out and invite them all to the evangelism series that would happen that night, to the health expo that would happen the next day, the VBS that would happen 2 days later. And so we would invite them, and there would be immediately all kinds of activities for them to join, which would encourage them to become a part of that community. And so it was really kind of neat to see them do that. This is a picture of one of those evangelistic series, and this is the leader of Mexico Missions, Rich Sutton, and this is one of the students from Laurelbrook, Moises. And this was his first time translating, but he wanted to learn, he wanted to try. And the amazing thing about it is that as he was translating, he was making the appeal for people to respond to baptism. And a lot of people did. That's the first church. Remember that hole in the floor? Well, they put a makeshift baptismal in there because they hadn't had a chance to pour it and finish it out. After the baptism, they had another call. And there's Moises. He responded to the call that he had given the night before, that he had translated for them. And he had been kind of delaying on that, and it's awesome just to see how God works in their lives. It's kind of cool. This is the lady that lived across the street that they made friends with, and she was baptized. It was kind of neat because they'd been making friends with her all along, and then when we went on our walkabout, some people went to her front door. We saw people in the back working on a car, not knowing it was the same house, and we talked to her husband. And while he didn't come forward for baptism, he did attend the services there for church. This is the last church at Las Palmas, and this one's a little bit of a miracle all by itself. When we originally went to designed to go down into Mexico, we were only planning on building 3 churches with the possibility of building the roof out on one other. This one wasn't on the list at all. About a month before we get there, one of the church members really felt impressed that he really would love to have a church in his area, and so he went out on a limb, bought the property, or got a loan from the bank to buy the property. He put half of it down. That's all he had. He had nothing left. And the bank told him he had 30 days to pay off the rest of it. And then he begged Mexico Missions to build him a church there, but he had no foundation. He had nothing. So while we were working on the other churches, he got some members together, and they did the best to level out the land and clear it off so that a foundation could be laid there. And he was just praying that we would get done soon enough with all the other stuff, because he has no way to pay it. I mean, if he doesn't pay up, then the bank keeps his money, and he doesn't get the land anyways. And so he's just praying that we would get done soon enough, and we did. We sent an early crew out. While we were finishing up the one at Chiquiloque, then they went ahead and laid a foundation. Didn't pour a floor, but laid a foundation. And when we came back the next day, we were able to put it all up. But now by the time, this is a month before we even came, or were even going to be there. We were there for almost 2 weeks. He's got a week or so left, obviously, before he has to pay up, and he doesn't have the money. So we've built him a church now. It's on the site, but he might not get to keep it, because if he can't pay the bank takes it back, building and all. So we took up a collection among those of us that were there, and some of the Mexican workers, paid it off to the dollar, to the exact amount. And then as we were finishing, now this is 5 roofs, and we were originally saying 3, possibly 1 more. Well, Mr. Sutton didn't have $10,000 for 5 roofs. He had probably a little over $6,000 for 3 plus. And he was supposed to walk into that building because the conference had footed all the bill for the materials, but he was supposed to supply the money for the roofs. And he was praying, Lord, he's like, Lord, I don't have it. I just don't have it. So he walks in there, and how did it happen? Do you remember?
He walked in there, and they asked him, so what are we going to do? Where's the money? And he was about to say something, and somebody walked in and handed him a check and said, for whatever you can use it for. And they walked out, and he got a phone call and said, I'm willing to help. Whatever you have left over, I'll cover it all. And right after that, somebody else walked in and handed him another check. And he was like, so he called the person right back and said, this is how much I have left. This is what I need. And they said, okay, it's covered. And he hung up. He looked at them and said, here it is.
So he didn't even get a chance to sit down. He walked in, and as he walked in, the Lord provided it right there, all the money that he needed to cover it. So it's just amazing. This is the last story. This is a police station. You'll notice there's no one there. There's no windows. There's just slats there to keep the majority of the weather and bugs out. Obviously not too big. They weren't there much. Police are, just like most emergency services, they're underfunded because of a corrupt government, so they'll oftentimes stop you because they need gas money, or they need money for a drink, or they need, whatever it is, or lunch money. And especially if they know that you're American, they're going to stop you because they know you have more money. So anyways, we had a wonderful experience because on the way back, the bus has got enough fuel to make the entire trip. They have extra large tanks. It'll make the entire trip without stopping. And that's their goal. They don't want to stop. They just want to keep driving. It doesn't drive very fast, but they want to not let it stop. But obviously the vans and the truck, they can't make it that far. They got to stop for fuel at least once along the way, maybe twice. And so they stopped for fuel, and the bus kept going. And then they got separated. Somehow they got separated at a toll bridge. They weren't wanting to go to the toll bridge or whatever. One of the vans got hung back. They knew where to go, but they stopped to use the restroom. But because a bunch of them were sleeping, they didn't realize that one person didn't make it back. And so we drove. And 2+ hours, 3 hours down the road, we all stop again for breakfast. Everyone's getting out, and they're like, "Hey, where's the person?" And they realized that person had not come out of the bathroom when they left. The scary part of it is that it was an entire family that had come. They were in that van. It was a husband and wife driving. They had 3 of their other kids in the van, and their 4th one had been the one that had been left.
A 14-year-old girl.
Talk about scared. And no way to contact her. The girl had no phone, and the parents had a different phone number than the girl was used to because they had a Mexican phone, so she didn't know the number for that phone. And of course, there's not a lot of cell signal, so unbeknownst to them, the girl had actually logged onto their Facebook page and was trying to contact them from Facebook, but of course, there's no cell signal, and so their parents weren't getting that message. So she was trying to contact her parents, and they were trying to figure out how to contact her. And anyway, so obviously that van turned around and went back, and we were praying that she would be okay. The girl was smart enough to, and she knew Spanish, so she was able to ask for police, and the police came, and then we were able to contact one of our contacts. There's a Seventh-day Adventist worker down there, Jesus, who knew the area, and he immediately turned around, and he was about 20-some minutes or so away. He drove back to that spot. So the family has no communication going on. They're heading down that 2 hours, and he made it down a lot faster than he'd been coming up. So anyways, they get down there, and they find out that in the process of our worker that turned around and went back, he was explaining to the police what they were doing. The police were able to get in contact with the parents before they even got there, and there was communication. So the parents, by the time they got there, they knew everything was okay. But the police started questioning everything about the mission, and there's been a communication going on now continually between that family and the police down there in that area, and the mission that we have to help build churches in that area. And it's just amazing. The group eventually caught up with us. Everything was okay. Nothing bad happened. And in the process, God allowed a ministry opportunity to take place as well. While they were returning, we got stuck at another police port. Our bus was pulled over. We were asked to all get off. We had to run all of our stuff through a scanner, kind of like TSA does at the airports. And they took out samples of our luggage from under the belly of the bus, and they were searching through all of that, and et cetera. And they finally okayed us, and as we were getting ready to go back on, one of the guys was asking questions, and again, my Spanish to speak is not very good, and so I actually pulled one of the Spanish speakers over, and I said, "Listen, he's got some questions about who we are and what we're doing." And so he starts sharing what we're doing, and the guy was like amazed that we would make a trip thousands of miles out of our comfort zone to build churches for people we'd never met before, to give our money. We paid to come down here to give and to do our time, and he was just really amazed at it. And so every opportunity there was a ministry, there was a message, there was a mission. Even when we weren't building, even when we were all done, we weren't all done, because God was doing amazing things. Okay. Yeah. So what has it done to us? What has it done for us? Go ahead.
I learned a lesson that it's better to give it than to receive. It's better to give than to receive. I don't. It's. Oh. Somewhere in Acts.
Okay. It was a good thought. Go ahead.
Oh, so everything down there was new. I mean, the trip was new. Riding in 15 passenger vans was new. Building churches was new. Eating their food was new. Using the bathrooms there was new. Taking showers there was new. And, there's two ways to do it. You could do it with a happy attitude or with a grumpy attitude. And Philippians 4:11 through 12 says, this is Paul speaking. I am not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want.
1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 8 says, and having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. And that's truly what it was down there. The people had food, and the people had clothes, and they had little shacks, and they were content. They had dirt floors, and there was this one place I saw, there was a couple little kids playing with a few beat-up cars on a hard-packed dirt floor, and they were so happy. They don't have very much down there, but they are happy with what they have. And if you look at us here, we have so much that we should be more content with what we have.
So we got some advice before we left a few times. But the one piece of advice that I really remembered and embraced, Mr. Fenwick gave me, and it was the Sabbath before we left. He said, just immerse yourself in the culture. He said, enjoy every single aspect of it, and just really enjoy it, really get into it. And I remember that throughout the time that we were there, because some of it was hard, and we were tired, and we were dirty and stinky, but the people, just being in the culture, we experienced so many new things, so many different things, and we just really tried to immerse ourselves into their culture and become like them and be with them and enjoy them. And in 1 Corinthians 9:22 and 23, it says, I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some. And that's why we did it. Although it really did benefit us, it strengthened us, it taught us a lot. In verse 23, it says, I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. And it truly, truly was. It wasn't plush. It wasn't comfortable a lot of times. But we truly were blessed by the experience of just, going into their culture and becoming what they were, living life like they did. And I just want to throw one other blessing in, or one other thing that I learned. It was so impressed upon my mind as I would listen to our leader, Mr. Sutton, talk just about past experiences and about the experiences that we had there. This man expects great things from God, just like that story about how the money was provided for him. He doesn't know where it's going to come from, but he expects and he goes forward because God is leading. And in Jeremiah it says, behold, I am the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me? No, there is nothing too hard for me, and that is how that man lives. And I just went away from that thinking, I've got to expect more from God, because God is so willing and able to do it, and we expect so little sometimes. And so anyway, we experience God, the God of all flesh, who is able to do anything and provide anything, and it was really neat to do that.
I had a lot of misgivings about this mission trip as I went, because everything started falling through right in the beginning. I got a lot of surprises. I had a lot of misgivings about this. Their webpage has been updated since 2013. Nobody answers their phones. They don't answer their emails. I felt like I couldn't get a communication across, and yet I would find out from other people that I was supposed to be the lead driver, or I was supposed to be the lead evangelist, or I didn't know any of these things, and I didn't feel, and so I really felt uneasy about doing things I'd never done before, about going places I'd never been. Even though I've been on a couple of mission trips before, there was just a lot I didn't know and I couldn't seem to find the answers for. Yet I wanted to trust the Lord that it would take place, and it was amazing. I had to learn a lot of flexibility. Meal times were not regular, and the trip was oftentimes adjusted on the fly. And so I get it now. It was difficult sometimes, but I get it now. And it was amazing because we learned to live with a lot less. We learned to do with a lot less. I'm reminded of the experience of Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. He's called out of Ur of the Chaldees, and he leaves all of his family behind, and he's not even told where he's going. In fact, Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8 says that he was going to a land he knew not, and yet the Lord promised him that he would be a blessing to all nations. And that's really the issue that I feel is at heart here. We share this with you not because we're here to brag about what we did, because in reality, we were a pin drop to what was actually completed there. We didn't do a lot. But it's amazing because we were a part of something that was a blessing to hundreds and thousands of people. It was amazing to see the work moving forward. It's amazing to see what God did, and the miracles, just awesome. That's really what I think is so amazing about it. God calls us to do things outside of our comfort zone so that He can bless us. Mr. Sutton doesn't wait till the money comes in. He moves because the Lord is moving. He gets down there without enough money, but he moves forward, trusting the Lord to take care of it. And then it's taken care of. And it happens every time. God is moving, but He's waiting for us to get up off our duff. He's waiting to get us up off the seat and do something. We can't wait till the money's in the bank account. We can't wait until the money is obviously there for a price. We got to move by faith and watch the Lord provide in ways we have no idea about. So it cost us some money to go, cost us some time, and getting back, it's been difficult to get into the swing of it because it put us really behind on a lot of things. I had a bunch of things that were supposed to be due by the end of the year, and I got back after the end of the year, and so I had people from the conference emailing, texting, and calling me asking about things I was supposed to have gotten done and hadn't gotten done yet. But you know what? It was so worth it. It was so worth it. God is amazing, and He's doing amazing things. Song that came to mind, and it really, as I thought about it, now thank we all our God. It's amazing because that's really what we can say when we're done. We thank the Lord for the experience, for the miracles that He did on our behalf, that He kept everyone safe, that we got so much accomplished, and that the Word of God is now being proclaimed more completely than it ever was before. God is an awesome God. Okay, all right. Thank you. Any more questions? Any more thoughts? We want to go again, but we hadn't decided when. Yeah. But it was amazing. And yes, we liked it enough that we're considering it again. And we'd love to take a few more of you with us. Yes. Most do not speak English in pretty much all the places that we went to.
We found that the people who did speak English were a lot of times the college kids who had gone away to university in Mexico City or someplace like that, and were back for Christmas. Oh, yeah.
No.
Many of them didn't. Oh, yeah, not there.
If you live in a bigger city, there are schools. If you live in the outlying area, there aren't any schools. And there's a lot of uneducated people that just kind of live by the crops that they do or by handy trades.
So many of these little towns, like Poza Rica was a bigger city, and some of them spoke English. But so many of the little places that we drove out to, I mean, these were these just tiny little villages, no road really per se, just little places with little shacks, dotting the little countryside. and I don't know where their stores are actually.
Mostly gas
Maybe
stations.
little convenience
Yeah.
places. Anyway, it's just very, very small, and so
What little Spanish we speak, what little English they speak was usually enough to get it across. So it was hilarious sometimes. One girl was trying desperately to say no hablo español, but she said instead no hablas español, which means you don't speak Spanish. So she was saying to the Spanish-speaking person, you don't speak Spanish. It was a little hilarious. But, they got the point. Obviously, they got the point. She doesn't speak Spanish. But, they were so willing to work with us. It was neat. Any other questions? We did miss being home. And that's some of the challenge. We have a lot of unique holiday experiences that we've incorporated into our family that we kind of had to postpone. And so that's kind of our tug of war at this point in time. We'd love to be able to do some of those, but Mexico Missions always goes over the Christmas break because that's the best time you can get students away. So, I don't know. We'll see. You may hear of us going again sometime. So, any others? Okay, let's bow our heads for prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Mexico Missions and beyond and all the wonderful things that they're doing. Lord, thank you for the churches that you allowed us to finish, or at least to get erected. Lord, you know there's a lot of work to be done there. You know the baptisms and the Bible studies that are occurring right there now. Lord, we pray that those churches will be a light in their community like never before, and that, Lord, the message would go out. Lord, I pray that it would prepare a people for your soon return. Lord, I thank you for all of those that came along the mission trip. Lord, for the wonderful miracles you worked in our lives. And Lord, I pray that wherever those missionaries are, that you would continue to bless them and to draw them closer to you. Lord, I pray that we would get a sense of mission, that we would see outside of ourselves and outside of our circumstances, and that we would have a drive to share the message of your soon return around the world. Lord, help